Hi there, I'm Tim Davis. I'm the Democratic candidate for United States Congress for the 7th Congressional District of Missouri. Thanks for joining me today. This is the second in a series of videos about me, my candidacy, why I'm running for office, and my vision for the country. If this is the first time that you've seen this video series and aren't sure whether you live in the 7th District, it takes in basically all of Southwest Missouri, from Bolivar over to Joplin and down to Branson. Today, I want to be talking about creating jobs. It's a subject important to all of us. Let's start with the basic facts. Behind me is the most recent report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. If we turn a few pages into the report, we'll come to this graph that shows the number of jobs created and lost each month in the United States economy for the past 10 years. The data is interesting because it shows, starting in January of 2008, that the number of jobs lost each month stayed about constant, but the number of jobs created fell off sharply. This suggests to me, and it should to you as well, that the high unemployment we see is not a result of massive layoffs or job losses. It's a result of new jobs not being created in the economy. That begs the question, what are factors that affect whether new jobs can be created? If you'll turn with me to the next slide, I'll talk about at least 4 factors that contribute to job creation. First, the federal deficit affects the number of jobs that can be created each month. How is that, you ask? Well, at least in 3 ways. To a large extent, the federal deficit is financed by borrowing from China and countries in the Middle East. The massive influx of foreign capital to finance the deficit tends to bid up the value of the U.S. dollar relative to foreign currencies. This makes it more difficult for us to export because our products seem more expensive abroad. At the same time, foreign goods seem cheaper and we tend to import more. It leads to a loss of net exports and a loss of jobs, especially in manufacturing. To the extent that the federal deficit is financed by borrowing at home, it tends to crowd out private investment, or stated another way, jobs that would normally be created in the private sector through private investment never get created because those private monies are being used to buy government bonds to finance the deficit. There's a third way the deficit matters, and it's this. Consumers, like you and me, are forward-looking. Our spending decisions today are based on not only what we earn today, but what we expect to earn in the future. To the extent that people look at the government action and expect lower future incomes, they spend less money today. That's a problem because it lowers aggregate demand and tends to raise the level of unemployment. If you'll turn back to the slide, I want to move on to the next factor affecting employment. And that is the bailouts we've seen over the past 2 years, where the federal government stepped in to bail out General Motors, AIG, and a number of large financial corporations. The fact that the bailouts occurred amounted to an implicit government guarantee of the debt of America's largest corporations. Small and newly created businesses, by contrast, don't benefit from the same guarantee. That makes it harder for small and newly created businesses to borrow money because financial capital now tends to be skewed toward America's largest corporations. This is a problem because it's small and newly created businesses that generate most of the new jobs in the country. If we'll look now at the next point on the slide, small banks especially are laboring under high FDIC premiums and a regulatory scheme that makes them reluctant to make new loans. Again, while America's largest corporations benefit from easy access to capital, small and newly created businesses are having a hard time getting loans because of the FDIC premiums, because of the rapid changes in regulation, and again, that's bad for the economy because new jobs simply aren't being created. Finally, the U.S. labors increasingly under a non-competitive corporate tax structure. The United States has the 2nd highest tax rate of any country in the world, and in terms of the overall tax structure, the most onerous corporate tax system, because American corporations are taxed based on their worldwide income, not just on what they earn here in the United States. This is a problem because other countries like Switzerland or Singapore or Ireland offer much more competitive corporate tax rates and tend to draw corporations to be based in those countries instead of here at home. That causes a loss of jobs. So, what can the government do about it? Well, if you will, turn with me to the next slide, and I'll say. What the government should not do is attempt to take over and manage American business. The government doesn't do that very well. The government has no profit motive and therefore no rationality, no means to determine whether the resources that it's putting together create wealth or not. Having said that, the government does play an essential role in what happens in the economy, and the government has to make certain types of investments. If it doesn't, there'll be no jobs, there'll be no economic growth. What, you ask, are those types of investments? Well, at least 4 types. I've got them listed on the screen here behind me. First, the government invests in protecting people and in protecting property. This happens through our military, our intelligence services, our local police, federal police services, through our criminal justice system, through our civil courts, all combine to form a structure, a framework, if you will, that protects persons and protects property. Private property is important to be protected, but also there are essential types of public property, such as the air around us that we breathe, our lakes, rivers, the coastline. These are all types of public property that the common law never came to grips with in dealing with in an efficient way, and the government has to step in to make sure those types of property are protected, largely through environmental regulation. Fourth, and finally, the government must make essential investments in defense, education, infrastructure, and other areas that the private sector simply doesn't handle well. Without those crucial investments, the economy can't flourish. Education's a prime example. You saw from the initial slide that there's a rapid change in the United States labor market. Jobs are lost on a regular basis and then created through technological improvement. Without a well-trained labor force, people simply can't adapt to the change in technology. That's why government regulation, government investment rather, in education is so crucial. Well, that concludes what I have to say about jobs, at least for this segment. In the segments following, I'll be talking about government spending, especially spending on entitlements and what we can do about it. I'll be talking about taxation and the efficient form of taxation. I'll be talking about banking reform and other topics that affect our economy, and that'll be of interest. I hope you'll join me. I'll be glad to see you then. Again, this is Tim Davis, the Democratic candidate for United States Congress for the 7th Congressional District of Missouri. I'll see you soon. Thanks again, and goodbye.